Hello exiles and welcome to my first build guide video. I was planning to make this video for this league for Righteous Fire Chieftain, since I've always league started it, starting from the Legion League, but with the recent Chieftain changes I had to adjust the build and the path of building. So that's why this video is kind of late in my time scale. I have never played the meta Righteous Fire build and always went with my own Chieftain build for leagues now. Not that there's anything wrong with the meta one, or mine was any better. I just enjoyed my version before Righteous Fire was meta and still enjoy it, so I kept playing it. I'm not the most popular player out there, but some of you hardcore trade players may recognize me as the guy who runs lab service every league to get Righteous Fire damage on his Hrimnor's Resolve helmet with the burning damage corrupt. So without further ado, let's get into the build. So to explain the build, this build uses Righteous Fire as its main damage source and Incinerate as its second damage source. Since Righteous Fire doesn't require your input to deal damage, that enables the use of a side skill to do extra damage. We also use a staff and not scepters or shields. We socket our Righteous Fire in our body armor and socket our Incinerate in the staff. I will get into more detail in item section, but the reason for this setup is getting levels for Righteous Fire from body armor modifiers such as Influence and Dell gem level mods, and more levels from staff global gem level mods, getting about the same numbers without the need to craft expensive Righteous Fire helmets. With the recent Chieftain change, great amount of our damage comes from being stationary. Incinerate is a channeling skill that lets us do just that. We don't deal damage through hits of Incinerate though. We use the 8 stage release wave ignite damage, which is almost half the damage of our main skill, Righteous Fire. We channel it, release it, reposition our character, dodge attacks and apply it again. We use Scorching Ray as totem to gain the great amount of exposure it applies to monsters. And yes, it does apply its exposure even when it is used by a totem. We use the classic auras, Determination for defense, Malevolence and Skitterbots for damage, and last but not least, Purity of Fire for that juicy all max ras. With the new Chieftain change, modifiers to maximum fire resistance also apply to cold and lightning, so Purity of Fire is easy plus 4 to 6 all max resistance, depending on gem level and aura effect you have. As movement skill, we use Flame Dash. We use Infernal Cry to apply covered in ash debuff to bosses and explode packs of monsters with ease. Flammability is the obvious curse of choice, and Molten Shell on cast when damage taken for extra survivability, and while Molten Shell is a great panic button. We get our freeze and chill immunity from our best in slot helmet, Hrimnor's Resolve, ignite immunity from Ascendancy, and shock immunity from Pantheon, plus Ringcraft. Now, we are not immune to shock fully, but we reduce its effect by at least 100%, which is immune in most cases and tiniest amount of shock in other rare cases where monsters can have increased effect of shock. Now, pros and cons of this build. Pros: great clear, great bossing, good survivability with good amounts of life, maximum resistances, recovery, optional suppress mods, and armor plus endurance charges. Also, easy to gear, and dare I say, budget build. Now to the cons. Even if not all times, being stationary is scary in Path of Exile. May feel slow to move around with only one movement skill, which can be compensated by adding phase run, and you may struggle to get unique items in solo self-found, but rare items do just fine for early mapping or until red maps. So, the new Ascendancy changes for Chieftain are not yet implemented in Path of Building, but they are not too hard to implement yourself, since your maximum fire resistance modifiers also affect other elemental resistances, you can just count them up and add them in custom modifiers section of configuration, as well as just halve your fire resistance mods and add them to cold and lightning. Enemies don't have fire resistance while you are stationary. Part of the notable, you can just assume you are stationary when you deal damage most of the time, some of the time, and put 1 in the enemy fire resistance stat. Putting 0 in kind of bugs it. I don't know why. Maybe some other modifier affects it. I mean, just to show you, when we put it to 1, we deal this much damage. When we put it to 0, it drops down to -1. It goes back up. It's bugged, it is what it is. With the new Chieftain Ascendancy, the nodes we are gonna take are obviously modifiers to fire resistance, also apply to cold and lightning resistances. Pretty good node. Modifiers to maximum fire resistance also apply to maximum cold and lightning resistances. So that's 2 out of 4. We are also gonna take the nearby enemies have no fire resistance against damage over time while you are stationary mode. And for the 4th node, I'll probably go with the exploding node. So let's take a look at the overall passive tree. First levels try to go for, I usually go for this, but going for this part is also good. After you get this part or this part, I recommend going to the unwavering stance. And we don't have anything to do with evasion. Cannot be stunned is huge. Taking max resistances are huge as well. Then go for the endurance charges. Endurance charges are pretty good for mitigating physical damage and extra resistances early on. Then I recommend going upwards, taking nodes here. All resistances are good in the campaign. Great life node, another great node, and take 50% increased elemental damage. Towards the end of the campaign, I recommend going for the reservation nodes towards like 80-85, level 80-85. You can choose to go early for clusters, which I recommend. Gem links. It's pretty simple. Let's switch to modest settings. Your typical righteous fire, burning damage, swift affliction, life depth to activate swift affliction, elemental focus, and concentrated effect. For Incinerate, we have combustion, which boosts Incinerate damage as well as righteous fire damage. Infused channeling, it boosts Incinerate's damage as well as righteous fire damage, and our survivability, life depth, because mana is hard. Immolate, great amount of fire damage against burning enemies. Simple auras, nothing crazy. Life depth on flame dash, infernal cry, and flammability, because again mana is hard. Scorching ray on spell totem support, and molten shell on cast when damage taken. On endgame, this doesn't change, this doesn't change. I mean, the levels and quality, obviously you want the best of the best. If you have the currency for it, go for it. For our righteous fire setup, we are switching to awakened gems. We also switch to wall righteous fire and get a 21 righteous fire, because righteous fire scales greatly with gem levels. On the items section, we have our early best in slot staff, the Searing Touch Lethe. It is one of the best staffs for righteous fire. It gives fire dot, fire damage, fire spell skill gems level, all fire spell skill gems level. It is not expensive at all. Pyramnos Resolve, abundant in Trade League. You can just take many helmets, corrupt them, get that socketed skill gems, get a 90% cost and reservation multiplier implicit. It is important to fit all our auras. And the enchantment is optional. If you have the divines for it, go for it. Simple body armor. Get a simple warlord influence body armor. Get that +1 level of socketed active skill gems for that extra damage. Suppress spell damage mod is always good. Get a good life roll. Craft maximum life on it. If it has any resistances, turn it to fire resistance. Simple glows. Again, Exarch and Either of Worlds implicits, just roll them. Not too hard. Life, fire res. Get that life regeneration rate. Affix, it's important for survivability. Again, same kind of boots, same kind of implicits, roll them. Get life regeneration rate mod. Get a good movement speed because this build lacks movement. Now, amulet is a bit tricky. It can be expensive. You can give up the damage over time multiplier mod on it. Just get +1 to level of all fire skill gems, or give up the level of fire skill gems and get the dot multiplier affix. Or get both if you have the money for it. Go for it. Make sure it has good attributes, and if you have the money, catalyze it with attribute modifiers. I put in Vermilion rings because if you play trade, you're gonna just buy them. They are not too expensive. If not, go for any other ring that fixes a problem in the build you didn't have a chance yet. But if you can get a Vermilion ring for that maximum life, roll it with Harvest Chaos option. If you get an attribute mod on it, great. Life is always needed. Mana is just appears even if you don't want it to. And if it has an open suffix, put the reduced effect of shock on your mod there. Belt, if you can't get a Stygian Wise, get a leather belt. Make sure it is an elder item and get that increased life recovery rate. If you hit maximum life as well, great. You can roll it with chaos resistance essences. It's a great way to guarantee chaos resistance, but catalyze it before. I recommend with life catalysts. Get an abyss jewel that looks like this or fixes another problem in your build. Normal flasks, your regular flasks. I'm gonna talk about the why we remove burning unused flask in a second. It's a secret tech that I haven't seen anyone else use before. I mentioned it a couple times on subreddit. Nobody seemed to know about it. Maybe people use it and I don't know. I haven't seen other people use it before. I'll get to that though. About jewels, now Grand Spectrum may seem like an expensive item, but it is not. The increased elemental damage Grand Spectrums are quite cheap. I recommend going for the cluster jewels at the end of the campaign, or about when you hit yellow maps at level 80-85, you start to roll them and put them in. By 90-95 though, you must have them socketed and fully allocated. Getting a 3 passive large cluster jewel isn't easy, and they're gonna be a bit expensive. Medium cluster jewels, they give flow of life, are pretty good. They give increased life, increased maximum life, and life regen. Student of Decay, extra chaos resistance is also a great mod. You may want at least one Grand Spectrum with increased reservation efficiency corrupt on it, because again and again, mana is hard. The more you have, the better it is. I mean, we're not gonna use mana that much, but still. On endgame side of things, in endgame Hymnos Resolve, it is about the same, except try to go for 2 implicit one, the burning damage or increased maximum life. Gloves, same gloves, better rolled, better implicits. Same boots, better rolled, better implicits. Now amulet is gonna be again the expensive part, but you're gonna want at least 2 of the 3 mods that are dot multiplier plus the level of all skill gems or plus the level of all fire skill gems. You want at least 2 of them for it to count as an end game amulet. If you can't, it's okay, focus on other items. This is gonna be an expensive one to craft or get because many people want these. Same kind of ring, just roll them with dot multiplier essences till you get a decent one. Again, same thing, craft attributes on it to fix your attributes, otherwise just take the plus 30 intelligence or dexterity attribute on your passive tree for a while. Again, same kind of belt. Please get a Stygian Wise at this point when you're in the end game, and get a good life belt. Increase life, maximum life, life recovery rate, you want them all. Try to roll this belt. It's gonna be a bit expensive, not too expensive. You can discard the armor affix there, it's not too important. Again, same Abyss Jewel. At the end game, your cluster jewels don't really change, but you want at least a corrupted blood immunity on one of your grand spectrums. Again, mana reservation efficiency on another of your grand spectrum jewels. And now this is gonna be expensive, a minimum frenzy charges per grand spectrum jewel. This is insane amounts of damage for 1 jewel. You can see the damages right there. If you have the money for it, go for it. Now about the body armor. As I mentioned, we got our gem levels from body armor. In this case, a sacrificial garb plus 1 to level of all wall skill gems is great. Even if you don't use the wall righteous fire skill, it's still plus 1 to level of the gem, and I think it affects the normal righteous fire as well. Plus the level of socketed active skill gems, as always. Good amounts of life. You can get the life recovery rate on your body armor as well, that's great. But if you have the currency for it, roll your body armor with faceted fossils to get that level of socketed intelligence gems mod. Even if it's not a sacrificial garb, you may aim to double corrupt one for a chance to get plus 3 to gem levels, plus 2 to AoE gems implicit, and plus 1 to socketed gems implicit for a plus 3 or increased damage maybe. Now to staff. You can carry the end game with a Letty. The staff is important, but it's not the most important piece. If you have good amounts of currency, go for a plus level of all spell skill gems and plus level of all fire spell skill gems staff. It's not a mirror tier item, but it's still an expensive item. About map mods to avoid, obviously if you're softcore, just look out for reflect. I mean, righteous fire doesn't let you take reflect damage, but you will use flame dash, incinerate, etc. You may die to it. Try to avoid map modes that reduce your life regeneration rate. If you're in hardcore, I mean, you know what to avoid at this point, but try to avoid stuff like reduced armor, reduced spell suppress chance, resistances, any other mods that is gonna cause you to die. I mean, you know how it goes if you play hardcore. Tips about this build. you're gonna have good amounts of dot damage even if you don't stay stationary. I mean, with modest items and modest skills, even if you don't stay stationary against bosses, you're gonna deal a lot of damage. So just run from pack to pack. When you encounter a rare that's hard to kill, cast your Incinerate, release at the 8th wave, put that ignite damage on them, and by the way, your ignite DPS is almost half your Righteous Fire DPS. We don't know, at least I don't know, if the ignite DPS you inflict on monsters persist at the same level when you move, when you're not stationary. Even then, it's still good. You're gonna kill even the tankiest rares like this. And towards the end game, you're gonna deal so much damage that just at bosses, at pinnacle bosses, at uber bosses, try to apply your Incinerate. It's gonna be a bit harder the harder the boss is, but try to apply it, because with the good gear your Incinerate deals insane amounts of damage. Look at this, 2 million DPS, ignite DPS for 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds to move around your position and apply it again. About why we turn off our burning Righteous Fire with a Flask. Now, Pantheon, Arakali, the one of the options, 20% increased recovery rate of life and energy shield if you have stopped taking damage over time recently. Now, you see where this is going, right? We turn off our Righteous Fire with our Flask, because Path of Exile is, you well know, is a Flask piano simulator. Spam your Flasks every 4 seconds. When mapping, obviously. Spam your Flasks. Turn your Righteous Fire off and immediately click your mouse button 1. By the way, put your Righteous Fire in your mouse button 1. Reapply your Righteous Fire and you have 20% increased recovery rate of life. As you can see, it's not too much, but it's good enough. Get it? Just you're gonna get used to it. It sounds complicated, I know, but you're gonna get used to it. Spam your Flasks, reapply your Righteous Fire, spam your Flask, reapply your Righteous Fire. It doesn't have to be every 4 seconds. Just when you're gonna face monsters. We use Soul of Arakali, we use Soul of Garukan for reduced effect of shock. With the Ringcraft, again, we're gonna reduce the effect of shock more than 100%. Okay, well, that's about it. Thank you for watching this video. If you wanna do me a favor, you can follow my Twitch account, which is linked in the description. I will try to stream this build and many other builds. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, usual stuff. Thank you for watching, and I hope you play this build, and I see you on the ladder, PoE Ninja. Let me know in the comments. Share your bossing videos with me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, exiles.